Hey guys, so in light of recent changes here on my YouTube channel, in case you haven't noticed yet, I have finally pulled the plug and changed my YouTube channel name. Thank you to everyone who has answered my cry for help in my last video, because you have really helped me out at making the decision. So yeah, from now on I am no longer SBeauty101 here on YouTube or Twitter or Instagram. You can now find me everywhere under my actual full name, which is Sandra Potisek. I'm gonna display it here so that you can memorize it, I guess. But enough about that. Today I actually want to talk about some other changes. I want to talk about how living in London has changed me as a person. Moving abroad is a very intense experience. It teaches you a lot about how the world functions. It teaches you a lot about yourself. So whether you want it or not, you definitely change a little bit as a person. For me, maybe it was an even more intense experience because I've moved here without knowing anyone. I didn't know a single soul in the city. I moved all by myself, and the change of setting for me was also quite big because I moved from a very small town, from a very small country to, you know, London, which is a complete opposite. It's like a huge city, very multicultural. So I thought I would talk about the changes that I noticed in myself, and if you yourself have moved abroad as well, I would love to hear what you have experienced and how you have changed. So please comment down below and let me know your thoughts. But yeah, without further ado, let's start with fact number one. So to my surprise, I actually became a lot less materialistic. Not that I valued materialistic stuff over, you know, others, but I was quite a bit of a shopaholic. I shopped a lot. I was constantly buying new makeup, and actually I thought that when I moved to London that it would get even worse, because when I used to visit London as a tourist, the number one thing that I loved doing was shopping on Oxford Street, because there were all these amazing stores that we didn't have back in Slovenia, so I always went a little bit mental. So yeah, when I moved here I thought, oh my god, I now have all these things available to me all the time. I can finally shop. But things turned out a little bit differently, mainly because London is very expensive. I was basically forced to become less materialistic because I just couldn't afford to shop. Even if you work and you have an okay beginner salary, it is actually really hard to survive. Especially rent here is just ridiculous. But now, after 3 years of living here, I actually don't even feel the need to buy unnecessary things anymore. Before I wanted them but I couldn't, but now even if I can, I don't, just because I really don't find joy in spending my money on things that I actually don't need anymore. Yeah, I think that's really cool. I like that about myself now. It's just still bizarre to me that I became that kind of person after moving into one of the most capitalistic kind of countries, where everything revolves around money. That's what happens to you if you're broke, in case you've been wondering. The next thing is kind of obvious, I guess, but I became a lot more independent here because I just had to learn how to deal with everything on my own. I don't have my parents here to help me out with anything, and I kind of had to grow up really quickly because as soon as I moved here, I had to find my own flat. I had to learn how to pay bills. Basically had to learn how this system here in this country functions and deal with all the paperwork and stuff. Before I moved, I still lived with my parents, so I didn't really have a lot of life experience. If there was something I wouldn't know, I would just call my parents and they would let me know what to do. Whereas here in England, I can't do that because the system is completely different and my parents don't know how to help me. So I had to figure out everything on my own. It's safe to say that I'm now quite an independent person, and I feel like I'm a lot more equipped for life now. The next point has to do with relationships. I'm gonna talk more about this in one of my future videos, which is gonna be what moving abroad has taught me. But one change that I've noticed in my life is that I got closer to my parents. We definitely talk a lot more than we used to, because before I moved we were around each other all the time, whereas now I don't see them at all. So we kind of almost have to make an effort and set aside some time to catch up and talk. Next one is a bit of a silly one, and I don't know if it only has to do with living in London or just fashion in general, because I haven't been home in a while, so I kind of don't know if this is acceptable back home. But when I still lived in Slovenia, I would never wear trainers as part of an outfit. it. Unless I would like go to sports or like go hiking, then I would put my trainers on, but never to, you know, just go around town, go to lunch. But here I am wearing trainers 24/7. They are literally glued to my feet because, oh, that's another point actually. I'm walking a lot more here than I used to back home. Back home, we went everywhere with a car, even to places that are definitely in a walking distance. We would always go with a car, but here you take public transport and you walk a lot. It's not like uncommon for me to walk between 14 and 18k a day. If I like go do something on the weekend, I don't walk as much during the week now that I'm working because I just go to work and back. But on the weekends I walk a lot, and trainers come in very handy because they're the only shoes that don't give me blisters, and they're also considered kind of fashionable over here, so no one really cares if you're wearing trainers. Yeah, that's one thing I've noticed about myself, because back home you would never see me wearing trainers. Converse, yes. Trainers, no. Another thing that has kind of changed within me is perception of distance slash time. I don't know how to explain it, but taking a train to the capital, which is like an hour away from the town I lived in. Still forget it, I don't live there anymore. It just seemed like ages away to me, and I would never take the train there unless I absolutely had to, like unless I had to go to school or to some like event or whatever. I wouldn't just, you know, go to the capital for fun because it seemed like such a long journey to me. Whereas now, every single day when I go to work, I spend usually an hour and a half on the tube or on the train every single morning, and then an hour and a half back. So I spend 3 hours using public transport. It's not something that I love, obviously, but it's not something that I think about a whole lot. And when I'm meeting up with friends on the weekend, I don't look at how much time it's gonna take me to get somewhere. It usually takes me at least an hour, but I never really not go somewhere just because it takes me an hour, which is what I used to do. One thing that I've started doing, which is probably a terrible habit to develop, is jaywalking. In London, this is kind of the standard. Everyone does it. It's not illegal as far as I know. And like, even if you cross a road at a red light in central London where it's really busy, cars will stop and they'll just wait, like they won't get upset. Whereas back home, like I would never cross when the red light was on. Everyone in the cars would get like super angry if I did that, and also it is illegal, so you actually can get fined. The last but definitely not least is I started hating crowds, and I especially started hating shopping on crowded streets. I just cannot deal with it. Before I moved here, crowds didn't bother me at all, but yeah, I seriously cannot stand crowds because I have to deal with them on a daily basis. Like, the tube journeys are a freaking nightmare every single morning because there's so many people on the tube. You don't have any personal space, you like can't breathe, and when you're like stuck in the tube for like an hour surrounded by all these people you don't know, like all up in your face, it is so stressful to me. And I literally need at least one day off a week to just be at home by myself to kind of recover from all the, I don't know, all the crowds. And the last thing that I can imagine myself doing is to go shopping when it's crowded, because that's a nightmare on a whole another level. I avoid Oxford Street, which used to be my #1 destination when I was here as a tourist, at all costs. There is no way in hell you're gonna see me walking into Primark at Marble Arch, because that place is literally hell on earth. Yeah, these are some of the changes, I guess, that I've noticed within myself that happened after I moved to London. I hope this video was somewhat interesting. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up so that I know you want to see more similar videos in the future. If you yourself have experience with moving and living abroad, I would love to hear how the experience has changed you. I find these things really interesting and fascinating, so I'd love to read about them. But yeah, I guess that's it for today. Don't forget to click the subscribe button down below to not miss any of my future videos, basically. And I will see you guys very soon. Bye!
About to leave, already packing. Come with me, I'm not really asking.